Hello and welcome to the Friday, May 23rd, 2025 edition of the SANS Internet Storm Center's Stormcast. My name is Johannes Ulrich, and this episode brought to you by the SANS.ins certificate program in Purple Team Operations and is recorded in Jacksonville, Florida. In Diaries today, I did a quick write-up on ensuring that you have resilient access to your home or small business network. That usually involves some kind of 5G satellite connectivity, which typically does not come with a publicly routable IP address. So you must set up some kind of tunnel to an external jump host. The one part I'm focusing on here is not really sort of mechanics of setting it up. There are plenty of good guides there, but how to secure that somewhat. This is an old problem. For example, in the good old days, when people still did war dialing and such, some of the console servers and such were exposed were often, not as well monitored as some of the regular firewalls and other perimeter devices. And similar things can happen here. If someone takes over that jump host, for example, they have often direct, no unauthenticated or weakly authenticated access to your network. And that's a little bit what this is about. I'm showing you a couple of scripts, for example, that make it a little bit easier to get alerts whenever someone logs in your jump host, considering that this may happen during network outages and that these systems, particularly again, focusing on a small business here or a home network, you may not have sort of the central logging infrastructure necessarily to collect an alert on all of the logs from these systems. So please keep that in mind. Don't build any tunnels into your network that bypass security controls without mitigating this with security controls around that tunnel. Well, and yesterday actually sadly didn't make it into yesterday's podcast. Didn't see it at the time it was recorded. We had an interesting blog post by Akamai, Yuval Gordon here with Akamai, who illustrates how a new feature in Windows Server 2025 may be used to essentially take over a domain, so for privilege escalation. The problem here is a new feature included in Windows Server 2025, and that's Delegated Managed Service Accounts, or dMSA. Service accounts have been around in Windows for quite a while, but they always have a little bit clumsy kind of the management of them and such. So these delegated managed service accounts and other new features around service accounts are supposed to help with the management of these accounts. Well, the problem, of course, is you have a ton of existing service accounts around. So Microsoft was nice enough to include a migration feature that allows you to migrate an existing service account to a dMSA. Okay, so what's the problem here? Well, at first, this looks like a very reasonable feature. You basically migrate the account, and in migrating the account, the new account, of course, will still have access to all the privileges of the old account. And the way this happens sort of under the hood is that the new account has a pointer that tells you what the old account was, and then the operating system is smart enough to basically look at the old account and just take those permissions and include them with the new account whenever authentication is done. The problem with this is that, well, anybody can set up a new dMSA. So not a migrated one, you just send up a blank, new, fresh dMSA. And then after the account is created, you, of course, have access to the account's properties. And with that, you can then basically tell the operating system, hey, this account was actually created by migrating an existing service account. So you just set that pointer in this new attacker-created account, and with that, you now have access to all the permissions of the old, not old in this case, but the fake old account that we sort of point to. So essentially, you're able to steal permissions from any other service accounts. The problem here is that, first of all, the permission to create service accounts is usually not sort of something that's very tightly controlled. So you have a lot of users that are able to create these service accounts, and that then there are really no additional controls around this. Also, there is, at least at this point, no patch from Microsoft. Microsoft only considers this a moderate issue. Usually, they consider purge escalation important, at least, issue. There's already any controversy between Akamai and Microsoft comes in. Microsoft basically says, well, you need already some elevated privileges, like the ability to create these accounts, which Akamai says, well, isn't really anything that special. From a mitigation detection point of view, well, of course, you can remove and control that permission, so users can't just easily create service accounts. Akamai also published PowerShell scripts to make it easier to find potential users, and also added a couple of other sort of hints how to, for example, see these migrations in your logs, and how to better monitor these migrations, which of course is another way to sort of mitigate the risk here. It's an interesting vulnerability, and we'll have to see how Microsoft in the end addresses all of this. Like I said, at this point, there doesn't appear to be a patch planned, but over the last 24 hours, there's been a lot written and spoken about this vulnerability, so there's a good chance that Microsoft will actually change its mind. And then sticking with the theme of, well, bad authentication and access control here for another story, Samlify. That's a Node.js JavaScript library in order to implement a SAML, has an interesting signature wrapping attack. What this really means is that you can create a SAML assertion and then just add additional data to it outside the signature, the signed block, and the recipient will just accept the entire message, the entire assertion, not just the part that's digitally signed. So this is something that sadly keeps coming up in signed XML implementations, and one more reason to mention it, definitely check for that and make sure you are updating Samlify if you're using this library. There are patches available for this vulnerability. Well, and that's it for today. Just a reminder, SANS Fire coming up, so please register. We have a bunch of stuff planned. Again, we do have like honeypot giveaways and things like that. So hope to see you in DC. That's it for today, and talk to you again on Monday. Bye.